أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, next chapter. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, Babu Zakat al-Urud. Here in this chapter, the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'a is going to talk about the fourth type of zakah, or the fourth type of wealth that there's zakah payable on. What was the first? Bahimat al-An'am, camels, and remember that? Camels and cattle and sheep. The second, al-hubub wal-thimar, crops and grains and so on. Third, dhahab wal-fidda that we just had, and naqd. The fourth is what? Zakat urud al-tijara. Zakat urud al-tijara. So urud al-tijara is ma u'idda lil-bay'i wal-shira'i li-ajli ribh. The meaning of urud here is ma u'idda lil-bay'i wal-shira'i li-ajli ribh. That which has been prepared for buying and selling in order to profit. طيب ما أعد للبيع والشراء لأجل الربح. ما أعد للبيع والشراء لأجل الربح. That which has been prepared and used for buying and selling so that a person can profit from. يعني business. And the evidence for this, or the strongest evidence for this, is ijma'. The strongest evidence for this is ijma'. طيب. And the ijma' narrated by or mentioned by Ibn Abdul Barr, An-Nawawi, Bayhaqi. And the only ones that dispute this is the Zahiriyya, Ibn Hazm and the Zahiriyya. They're the only ones that say there's no zakah that is wajib upon this. Ibn Mundhir rahimahullah, he says, وَقَدْ أَجْمَعُوا عَلَى أَنَّ فِي الْعُرُودِ الَّتِي تُدَارُ لِتِجَارَةِ الزَّكَاةُ إِذَا حَالَ عَلَيْهِ الْحَوْلِ. وَقَدْ أَجْمَعُوا, verily there's an ijma' that there is zakah payable on the urud that is used for buying and selling if it reaches the year, if it reaches the nisab. And al-Bayhaqi, he says rahimahullah, وَهَذا قول, that opinion, وَهَذَا قول عامة أهل العلم, that is the opinion of the majority of the people of knowledge. وقد حكى ابن منذر عن عائشة, and Ibn Mundhir, he narrates from Aisha رضي الله عنها, عن عائشة رضي الله عنها وابن عمر وابن عباس عفوا مثل ما روينا عن ابن عمر ولم يحكى خلافهم في هذا عن أحد. He says rahimahullah that Ibn Mundhir, he mentions there's an ijma', he mentions from Aisha radiallahu anha and Abdillah ibn Abbas, like we've mentioned from Abdullah ibn Umar, and the khilaf of that has not been narrated. Meaning there's ijma' because we don't know of anyone that opposed any of these companions. So the ijma' of the companions and the ijma' of those that came after them. Another evidence is the ayah of Allah Jalla wa Ala, يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا من طيبات ما كسبتم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا, O you who believe, أنفقوا من طيبات ما كسبتم. Spend from the good that you have earned. And Mujahid and others from the Mufassirun of the Quran, they interpret the Quran, they say من التجارة الحلال, from the tijara, the buying and selling, the merchandise that is halal. And some of the ulama, they have used this ayah to prove or to use as proof to show that there is zakah on urud al-tijara. And also the ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً, take from their wealth صَدَقَةً, and تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ, that cleans them, purifies them, and cleanses them. And tijara is part of wealth. Buying and selling, the wealth, the profit that you have, that is part of wealth. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, so that was the first mas'ala that is obligatory. The next mas'ala, إذا ملكها بفعله بنية التجارة. طيب. Now he's talking about the conditions for zakat to be wajib upon the merchandise that you have. When and how it becomes wajib. He says rahimahullah, إذا ملكها, بفعله. If he owns it, أن يملكها بفعله. He owns it with his action, by his own doing. For example, he buys it, or it is given to him as a gift and he accepts it, or it is mahr, or it is wealth that they've got from khul' and they intend to. Now, so إذا ملكها بفعله. So the first condition is that that person owns it with his own action. It's from his own doing. بنية التجارة, that's the second condition. بنية التجارة, and he has the intention of what? The minute that he's getting it, he has the intention of by using it for buying and selling. Pay attention, because this is important. The what? بنية التجارة. The minute that he's buying it and selling it, he knows he has the intention to buy it and sell it. وبلغت قيمتها نصابا. That's the third one. That is the third one, or third condition, that it reaches the nisab, the threshold. So how many conditions has he mentioned here for wealth to be considered as urud al-tijara? 3. The first, he owns it by his own action. What does this mean? Not tamam al-mulk. Nothing to do with tamam al-mulk. He goes with his own actions. He goes out and buys it, or is this given to him as a gift and he accepts it? Okay? You'll see when we study the opposite. بنية التجارة. The minute he buys it, he knows he has the intention of buying it and using it for selling. And the third is وبلغت قيمتها, and it has reached the threshold. Is that understood? طيب. If that is the case, زكى قيمتها. If these 3 conditions are fulfilled, زكى قيمتها. He pays zakah on its what? On its value. On its value. Surah al-Mas'ala. Let's say, for example, now I have مثلا £1,000. Let's say خلاص, I have £10,000. I want to open up a business and I want to buy and sell and so on and so forth. So I go and buy مثلا I want to sell books. I go to the bookshop and I buy books. £1,000, or let's say £10,000 worth of books. That's when my number one, my hawl, that's when my year starts. But that wealth is considered, from now on, it is considered what? Urud al-tijara, merchandise that I'm selling by. Why? Apply the 3 conditions. I've gone out of my way, my own action. I have the intention from the moment that I'm going to buy, and it has reached the nisab. £10,000 worth of books is obviously going to be over the nisab. If that is the case, what happens? Al-hukum zakah qimataha. Then I pay zakah on its amount. So let's say today, what's today? Let's say today is 25th of September. If we get to the next year, by the way, with zakah and wealth and expiations, all of this, you use the Islamic calendar. Okay, just for making it simple now. Let's say I own it on the 25th. I buy these books, £10,000 worth of books. When it reaches next year, this same day, 24th of September next year, I look at how much these books are worth. How much am I going to sell them for? I add it all up. And then I pay zakah on its what? Zakah qimataha. I pay zakah on its value. On the day that I want to pay the zakah. So mathalan, let's say I make my auditing on the 23rd, the day before the zakah. I audit the books that I have and they're worth 20 grand. My zakah is going to be how much? How much of my wealth is payable on zakah? 20 grand. Why? Because that's how much I'm going to sell it for. Is that understood? Zakah. Is
the value the selling price or the amount that you bought it for?
The selling price. How much I'm going to sell it for today. How much I'm going to sell it for today. Why? Why is it that? Because that is what I'm going to profit. That is what I'm going to profit. So if I bought it for £5 and I'm selling it for £10, then the wealth that I've accumulated is how much altogether? The profit is £5. Like, and how much have I got? £10 for that book. So I count that. That is the meaning of this mas'ala. The next part, فَإِن مَلَكَهَا, now he's going to mean the opposite. فَإِن مَلَكَهَا بِإِرْثٍ, if he owns it, بِإِرْثٍ, by way of inheritance. What does this exclude? It's not out of his own action. بِإِرْثٍ. أو بفعله بغير نية التجارة أو بفعله, or he does it with his action بغير نية التجارة, without the intention of buying and selling. So a person, مثلا, he has according to, now it would be فإن ملكها بإرث. Let's say a person's brother owns a bookstore. طيب فنوها للتجارة فلا تكون من طيب نعم بإرثه. Let's say I have 3 cars. These cars I've inherited it from a person who I normally inherit from. I inherit, let's say, 3 cars, or مثلا a shop. There is no zakah on this. Why? Because not even intention. It's not from my own action. These 3 conditions have to be fulfilled: action, intention, and it has to reach the nisab. Here, بإرثه, that's not my own doing. أو بفعله, or he goes out and buys it بغير النية. So I go out and buy, مثلا بغير نية التجارة, I go and buy مثلا £10,000 worth of books, but it is not with the intention of buying and selling. ثم نواها, then he makes the intention. لم تصر لها, it won't be considered عروض التجارة. What is the difference here? أو بفعله, yes, it is my own action, بغير نية التجارة, لكن intentionally, the minute I bought it, it wasn't for buying and selling. What was it for? My personal use. ولو ثم نواها, and then after a while I decided to what? To say I'm going to have it for buying and selling. لم تصر لها, it doesn't become part of wealth. It doesn't become عروض التجارة on that point. It doesn't become عروض التجارة. طيب لحظة فإن باعها وحال عليه الحول. طيب, so it doesn't become عروض التجارة from that moment. When does it become عروض التجارة? When I actually start to sell it. Is that understood? That is what is in the matan. طيب. The second opinion in this mas'ala is that it becomes zakah according to the niyyah. It becomes zakah, it becomes عروض التجارة according to the niyyah. As soon as you have your intention of niyyah, that you have it for buying and selling, that is when it is considered. Regardless of whether it's from your own action, whether you inherited it, whether you bought it without the intention of buying it and selling it. In any case, the moment you decide to sell it and have it as urud al-tijara, that is when it becomes what? Considered urud al-tijara. Which one's easier out of the 2 opinions? The second. Because everything on the second one is considered, what is looked at is the intention. Whereas the first one is going to be confusing. It's going to be confusing. طيب. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَتُقَوَّمُ عِنْدَ الْحَوْلِ بِالْأَحَظِّ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَتُقَوَّمُ. This is the next mas'ala. So the person can say, the next question is, okay, now that I've got 10,000 worth of goods in my shop, you said I had to pay zakah. What is the threshold? Is that not a valid question? No. The answer, he says, وَتُقَوَّمُ, and it is to be valued at the end of the year, بِالْأَحَظِّ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ, that which is better from the fuqara. Min aynin, ayn means dhahab on the matan. So ayn, dhahab, a dhahab. أو ورق أي فضة on top of ورق. مثلا, let's say I have 5,000 worth of goods. And I want to look at, and I want to pay zakah, or I want to see if there's zakah payable aslan on my £5,000. I've done the auditing and I realized that today my profit is £5,000. How many possibilities are there when it comes to finding out the nisab? 2. What are they? Dhahab or fidda. You're either going to use the threshold for gold or the threshold for what? For silver. What does the author say? What is better for the fuqara? What is better? The threshold that you use has to be the threshold that is better for the fuqara. And which threshold is better for the fuqara, for the poor people? The silver. Why? Because it is less. Because it is lower. Therefore, it is the silver that we have to use. And how do we calculate what the threshold for silver is? What is 595 grams? What is 200 dirhams? You're right, but 200 dirhams are what? About, but how? Excellent. That's all you do. You check online, what is the price of the 1 gram of silver? Who's got a calculator on them? Yeah? Okay. So let's say we looked online and it says the last time I checked 1 gram was 98p. So let's say 98p times 595. 583.1. Jazakallah khair. £583.1, sir. 0.1. Right. So that is the threshold for silver. So if my cash that I have in the shop is more than £583, there is what? Zakah payable. I said I had how much? 5,000. Then there is zakah payable. Sah? 5,000 times it by 40, divided by 40, then you get your zakah. Is that understood? طيب. The next mas'ala, وَلَا يُعْتَبَرُ مَشْتُرِيَةِ بِهِ. And this is important mas'ala. No. طيب. This is the mas'ala that I think that was mentioned about a minute ago, which was, what do you sell it with? The amount. What do you calculate? Do you calculate how much you bought it for, or how much you're what? Selling it for? And what do we say? What does the author say? وَلَا يُعْتَبَرُ مَشْتُرِيَتْ بِهِ. And what is not taken into consideration is what it was bought for. What it was bought for. So let's say, for example, I bought an item that I am selling. I bought it for £5. It was wholesale. I bought it for £5. And I'm selling this item for £10. I'm selling it for £10. And I have about 500 pieces. What is that going to be? 5,000. Sah? That is how much zakah I'm going to pay. I'm going to look at how much I am selling the item for on the day that it is ready to be sold. So it is already on the shelf and it says £10. That's how much I'm going to sell it for, because that's what I'm going to profit. طيب. So that's the meaning of وَلَا يُعْتَبَرُ مَشْتُرِيَتْ بِهِ. Then he says رحمه الله, وَإِنِ اشْتَرَى عَرَضًا بِالنِّصَابٍ مِنْ أَثْمَانٍ. وَإِنِ اشْتَرَى, and if he buys عَرَضًا, a عروض تجارة, okay, بِالنِّصَابٍ مِنْ أَثْمَانٍ. Now, when اشترى عرضا, if a person has wealth and he buys with his cash, he's got مثلا, he's got cash. Let's say he's got £10,000. £10,000 he buys, he buys عروض التجارة, things that he wants to buy and sell for, but he uses his cash. the nisab doesn't change. Or the whole, the end of the year, it doesn't change. It goes back to when I had the what? Cash. Let's say for example, today, September 24th, I buy, and what's it called? I have £5,000 and I want to go buy some items. I go and buy these items. I've changed my cash that I already had the nisab for. Then what? For £5,000 goods worth of goods. My whole carries on. وإن اشترى به أو عقود بنى على حوله وإن اشترى به عقدا بنصاب من أثمان. I buy عقود التجارة and it has reached the nisab. أو عقود or other stuff بنى على حوله. I continue with my حول. For example, a person رجل عنده مال يبلغ النصاب. I have مثلا £10,000. وفي شهر محرم يحول عليه الحول. On the month of Muharram, that's when my year passes. ولما كان الشهر شوال, and then Shawwal came a few months later. اشترى به عروض التجارة. I bought items that I want to now buy and sell. The عروض التجارة doesn't have its own حول. I use what? The whole of the money that I had to start off with. Why? Because with zakatul urud, with the stuff you're buying and selling, we make zakat, we pay zakat on its value. Just like gold and what? And silver. So they're considered as one. Remember we said we add the amount together if we have half. This masala is also connected to it. Then he says, وَإِنْ اشْتَرَاهُ بِسَائِمَةٍ. Like if he buys his money with مثلا sheep or cattle or ibil, camel, lam yabni, then there is a new hawl now. There is a new hawl. مثلا, I have £10,000 and then I go and buy £10,000 worth of ibil. Let's say I have today, my nisab starts, my year starts, and it reaches the nisab. Next September, this time, I'm pay what? Zakaah, sah? Like, let's say in 6 months' time, I go and buy camels. 100 camels. Probably, let's say I buy 50 camels. And that is worth, let's say, £10,000. 50,000, 10,000, 50 camels. I get these camels and it's not buying and selling, it's for my personal use. Do I say that the whole goes back to September? Why not? It is totally different now. Because the jins of money is not the same as the jins of the kind of money is not the same as what? As animals. There's a big difference. Whereas with urud al-tijara, you're always going to look at the value that it was worth. And that value is going to be gold or silver and how much they're worth, or the lower of the two amounts. طيب.
وقل رب زدني